Today I'm going to be talking with Anthony Stachurski, and he's a retired teacher. He was 20 years in Clarkston High School, which is close by to where Michigan Book Boutique is, and 5 years in the Troy High School, and in a couple community colleges in the area. He's retired now, and he's had the opportunity to write 3 books, No Apologies, Ferris Wheel, and his newest release, Under Salvation, and we're gonna talk about that today, and we're gonna do a little poetry reading.
Sounds good.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, how long have you been retired?
Well, I retired about 15 years ago, and I was going to devote myself to my writing, and then I moved to Arizona, and I ended up teaching at Pima College there. So I actually retired about 2 years ago, and I was writing long before that.
I was going to say
Yeah.
you have some influences back to when you were going to Wayne State.
Uh, I was very fortunate to have had a class by Pulitzer Prize winner William Snodgrass, and also at Wayne State University when I got my master's degree with William Aubert. 2 wonderful poets and 2 wonderful men.
And they were your mentors.
They were my mentors, and I'm always appreciative of that.
Well, that is a privilege. So tell me more about what inspires you to write your poetry.
You know, that's an interesting question. I've never really been asked that before in terms of inspiration, because it's just something kind of on automatic. It's like, why do people play softball, or why do people read history books?
Not
I guess
everybody
it's
can
just-
write poetry, though.
I know, I didn't even know I could write it. It was just something that I was attracted to. I have to say that the first time that I felt that zing with a poem was when I was in high school, 9th grade, and my English teacher read Wordsworth's To Daffodils.
Yes.
And when she read, I wandered lonely as a cloud. I didn't say anything. I didn't raise my hand and say that was beautiful, but I just felt that zing. And because I spent my childhood in England and Scotland, and with my mother and my father, we would wander the hills sometimes, it brought those feelings back. And when I went into the hall, when the class was ended, I just couldn't get that line or that poem out of my mind. After a couple of days, it went away like a dream, and but it was always there. And then when I got to college and I was reading more poetry, that spark fell on the tinder of my experience, and I started to write. So, and being of a philosophical nature and an observant, I think, sensitive person, I think it was inevitable that I do that as opposed to maybe music or painting or something else. And more recently, I have something to say. I have something to say. I don't just write because the muse was passing by and sprinkled a little happy dust on my head. It was that in life we all learn things. And I feel so strongly about some of the things that I've learned, and add that to my natural love of poetry, that it just was a natural thing for me to do. So it's very much a part of my life to write this poetry, because just as I taught for so many years and enjoyed what I taught, I felt it was
Now
perfect.
you taught English.
Yeah, and I taught science too for quite a while too. So I have my feet in both worlds. And so as I taught with a purpose, I write my poetry with a purpose.
Well, I can't think of a better way to introduce you doing some reading for us.
Okay. I like all my poems. So, you know.
You know, when you read the poems to me when we met before, they touch your soul, or my soul, and I just want you to share them.
You know, this book is called Under Salvation, and it's kind of a takeoff on the idea of under construction, which I feel I always am. You know, I'm never going to be a perfect person, but at least I have the will to want to pursue myself spiritually. But it wasn't always that way, and this is one poem before I've kind of evolved into what I am now. And it's called Homeless. What should I do? Pretend? Never. But still, it's true. I'm like the man that Rilke warned about, who built no house and now must walk the avenues these autumn days, no friend of God. What people say of men like me is true, and yet insensitive. But who would build a house of sand? What fool would pound one stick into the sinking ground? No, better to walk the streets and live among the sparrows and the leaves, even if it's cold and wet, and lightning strikes like flashing teeth about your naked feet. And that's the way I felt at the time. And this book has been my progressive evolution of as genuine statements I can make about the experiences, insights, intuitions, and transformations that have taken place.
Let's do one more.
Okay. Okay. I noticed that one of the barriers to my taking a spiritual path was really, part of it was my education, the association with certain friends who were almost always agnostic, okay? And part of it was, rather interestingly, and actually a source of embarrassment, was my pride.
Really?
To actually change a position, I had to change it within myself. And this one's called A Leap of Faith. False pride sleeps with its back to me, blocking my way to God like a wall my guards patrol. Armed, walking in stride, watching me suspiciously of late, sensing my defection. Sometimes I dream I'm running down the street holding a vaulting pole, my pajamas wet with sweat. Behind shut windows, friends urge me on. But every time I gain the speed to leap, I slip and fall. The guards spin around and aim their eyes at me. But I tell them nothing. Dusting off my clothes, I say, "Good afternoon. I was merely testing the strength of the stick." Or, my face redder yet, "Please forgive the commotion. I only wanted to get a better look at the moon." So,
Thank you for sharing with us.
oh yeah, it's a pleasure for me to read.
Been a pleasure for us to share with you. Thank you for
Well,
coming today.
thank you very much.